full throttle movement. This week on the full throttle movement we will have the 1 litre turbocharged 3-cylinder Kia GT line. This is the 1 litre TGDI engine from Kia. We have a 6-speed manual here, 19,720 on the road. Quite punchy really, considering how small an engine it is. I think it's basically designed to go against the previous 1.6 size engines. Along the same kind of lines as the Ecoboost from Ford. So let me take you a look around the car, just to show you some of the details, and we'll go from there. So if you watched some of my previous videos, you'll know that a few months back I drove the cee'd GT, which is the big brother for this car, 2 litre turbo. At the same time as the facelift for the GT, or the updates for the GT was launched, the cee'd GT line 1 litre was also launched, and it looks very similar from the outside. The front bumper is slightly different. It is missing the small black section and a different angle at the front there compared to the GT. I think it actually still maintains the overall good look of the cee'd. I think Kia are doing really well at the moment with their styling. Hopefully you all agree. Overall practicality is pretty much the same as well, it's identical to the GT, so if you want more info on that, go over to my cee'd GT video on the other side of the channel. You can just click the link in either the description or just above you. So this car's got 118 horsepower, 171 newton meters of torque. It's not the quickest thing, not 60 in 10.7 seconds, but to be honest, that's not really not what it's about with this car. So for me, you're getting the same looks as the GT, but at a better price point and more economical. Let's take a quick look inside to some of the changes that have happened. Again, keyless entry with this. I think all Kias now come with keyless entry. The first thing you'll notice is there is no Recaro seats as per the GT. But we do get these cloth covered Recaro lookalikes, if you like. Very comfortable. Still got plenty of side bolstering, which is exactly what you need. Just some nice details that I maybe missed on the GT. It's just some nice kick plates and the mats, etc. It's all the little details that I think they make the difference. Now, if you guys watched my cee'd GT video, this will all look pretty familiar to you. In this car there's a very slightly different steering wheel, and I'll go on to talk about that a little bit later when we take it for a drive. But as you can see, there's very little difference in the actual interior of the car, and the spec level, to be honest, as well, is pretty much identical. Right, let's get started with the car. Let's go for a drive. So, first impressions of the cee'd GT, or cee'd GT line 1 litre. I think it's great. Most modern cars now, the 1.6s are slowly being faded out for engines like these, either a turbo 1 litre, turbo 1.2 or a 1.4 litre. As production efficiencies increase, so the capacity tends to come down. Gone are the days where you would have 2 litre naturally aspirated petrol. Really, it tends to be a lot smaller engines than now. If any of you are familiar with the Ford Ecoboost 1 litre, I would say that this is pretty much very similar to that, both in the way it behaves, its general character. There's a few little subtle nuance differences, but not a vast amount. With this car, in terms of overall spec, it is pretty much the same as the GT. So we've got sat nav with your traffic updates, your media, Bluetooth connectivity. The only thing this seems to be missing that I can point out in compared to the GT is the heated leather seats, because A, it doesn't have leather seats and, well, they're not heated. So from that point of view, it does have everything else. Although what I would say is the hands-free kit on this car is really good. The speaker's mounted directly above the driver's head, so you get really good sound quality fed back to whoever's at the other end of the phone. That's one failure of the Honda Civic that I forgot to mention last week, is that the hands-free kit was a bit crackly. It wasn't the best. You can have a look at that review. I'll just put a link at the side here if you want to have a look at that review. This car would be a great choice for someone who likes to look at the GT but maybe can't afford the running costs, or maybe doesn't want to have the 2 litre engine to fuel. Certainly for this car, the fuel economy is about 10 miles per gallon better. I did a run on the motorway yesterday, a good 300 miles, and it averaged 46 miles to the gallon on the motorway. So, and that was cruising at a steady 70. Not really paying much attention to being an eco driver as such. So I'm pretty sure you could get more of it. I think the quoted is 57, but as always, European drive cycles are a bit different from how people tend to drive. Now, I mentioned a few videos that the full throttle movement is all about how the cars we drive today and the used cars that we have make us feel on a day-to-day basis. In this car, you feel as though you've stepped into a quality cabin. Everything has a nice weighted feel. There are a few down points that I will mention, more niggly gripes, if you like, than actual complaints about the cars and the car themselves. In the GT and in the Optima, they have this really nice 3-spoke steering wheel. It's a lot straighter in design compared to this one, and it feels a nice piece of kit. It's stitched leather, very nice piece of quality trim work in the cabin. The problem I've got with this steering wheel is that it looks a bit cheap. Now, there may well be a significant cost difference between this steering wheel and the other steering wheel, but for me, I think they should, if we're going to use the GT line as a kind of sub-brand for the GT, it should have the steering wheel as well. While the steering wheel is comfortable to drive, I do think that thumb grips are a little bit low, which means your hands sit a bit further down on the steering wheel, which is, I mean, that is all driver preference really. From my point of view, it should be a little bit higher, because it does feel as if the steering wheel maybe not quite concentric with steering column. But anyway, these are small details that you only pick up on really if you've driven both cars recently. If you just jump straight into this car, you wouldn't even notice it, to be honest. One of the great points about having the little 3-cylinder turbo engine is at motorway speeds and around town is barely audible. It's really quiet, really refined in the cockpit. So one thing I mentioned in the GT was that it was a really refined cockpit, and that all of the road noise tends to be dissipated. Now this car's got a slightly different wheel setup, wheel and tyre setup, so there's a bit more sidewall, which is only going to add to that. For me, I think this is a great combination of wheel and tyre, and it allows you to enjoy some of the rougher back roads, rougher roads in general, and not have to worry about curbing your wheel or damaging your wheels. The good thing about one of the good things about having a 3-cylinder engine is that you get that vague Porsche 6-cylinder sound, and it's quite endearing, to be honest. I have to say, with this particular engine, there are some sweet spots that you need to bear in mind in the rev range. I think they've specifically designed it with the intent that you won't rev it all the way out to the red line. The reason I say that is because basically after 3,500 revs, maybe 4, there isn't a great deal in terms of punch, but there's plenty of low down grunt, so that's 3.5. So yeah, I would say maybe 3,500–4,000 revs is where it starts to kind of run out of puff, really. But by that point, you're well on your way. One thing I find about this car is, due to its size, no, I'm not saying it's a big car, due to its size, it slows your perception of speed down. Because it's a slightly bigger car, it slows your perception of speed down. So with the engine tailing off at about 4,000 revs, if you keep giving it some, there are a few points where you think, I don't feel like I'm accelerating at all very much, and you look down at the speedo and you actually are doing 50–60 miles an hour, which is surprising. There are upsides to the engine not having as much power as you might think. It does mean you can enjoy what Kia have done with their chassis, and this particular car feels great. It still maintains the same chassis composure as the GT. Granted, it is slightly different, but not very much. The suspension setup is pretty similar, slightly softer than the GT, but obviously a lot firmer than the rest of the range. There are a few people who have expressed bemusement for the optional levels of power steering feedback. You get 3 options. You get comfort, normal and sport. Comfort, great for parking. Only problem is the buttons on the steering wheel, and if you're in a situation where you're trying to be parking the car, it's better to have it somewhere else. Fiat have done very similar. They've got the city button, and they have done for a number of years now. But for me, comfort is way too light for example, motorway driving. Then you have normal mode, which, to be honest, I haven't really been in very much. I have tended to stay more in sport mode, and I think the reason behind that is because it's slightly more weighted. Again, like I said with the GT, it doesn't give you a massive amount of feedback, but what it does do is it places the car really well on the road. You know exactly where everything is. So for me, Kia should really either have comfort and sport, and that should probably be it. There shouldn't really be a third normal option. So let's see if we can. Well, we're in a small village right now, so. So let's see if we can hear a bit of that 3-cylinder thrum. It actually makes the car sound a little bit more expensive than it should do. I mean, that quick little jaunt there was easily 30 miles an hour and wasn't even half throttle. So any fears that people have that there won't be enough grunt for your 1 litre, then I'd say give this one a try. I would say give it a try, because it might surprise you. Now, to sum up the Pro C GT 1 litre, great car. It is comparable, if not a little bit cheaper, than the Focus 1 litre, which is now available, which I would say is probably its direct rival, except this looks much better in person. I would have to say I'm not really a fan of the way the Focus is currently looking. I much prefer the way this looks by comparison. Now, would I buy one if I was in the market for a small hatch? Yeah, probably would buy one. Let's look at the 3 plus points and 3 negative points about this car. Plus point. It pretty much, without exception, looks like, without much exception, looks like the top of the range GT model. A couple of little styling tweaks around the front, but really not a vast amount different. It has a 50 odd litre fuel tank, so for example, I've done 420 miles and I've still got a quarter tank left. So it's a pretty big tank, which means long journeys aren't going to be an issue. And about long journeys, because the chassis is so well set up, long journeys aren't an issue. The interior is comfortable. All rounded as a day-to-day car is great. On the negative side, this steering wheel, like I mentioned, I am not a big fan of. It does detract a little bit from the overall experience and the quality feel of the cabin. The engine can be a bit flat after 4,000 revs. While it's pokey and fun up to 3,500, after that you're pretty much just wanting noise. And again, the third maybe negative point about that engine, about the car, is that although we're now going more towards a smaller engine in general in the car market, for me it still doesn't have the cachet of the 1.6. In fact, every single person that I've spoken to this week and told them the size of the engine on this car, A, they couldn't believe it, and B, they said, does that even make this thing move? So there's still a little bit of a lack of understanding from some of the more general public as to how potent and how good these engines can be. Things are starting to look up for the full throttle movement. Since I put out the video for plans for 2016, I've actually managed to secure quite a lot of cars between now and May, so the content will keep coming. I'll try and see if I can update at least weekly, as I mentioned. It looks as if I'm going to get cars pretty much every week, bar a few between now and May, so hopefully you'll be able to see a lot more content. I have a media day coming soon with Vauxhall, where you'll be able to see a couple of different cars, quite short. Instant feels almost kind of like a Matt Farah one take style. Both new and old Vauxhall cars, so from the range historically, including the HS Chevette, which I'm personally looking forward to. I think that'll be a pretty good car to try out. Many thanks for watching the review of the Pro C GT line 1 litre. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and we'll try and get back to you if you do write a comment as quickly as possible. As ever, you guys help make the content. Every like, comment and share that you guys do helps us get more videos as we go along. So once again, thank you very much.